Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are doing another unscripted, more or less, video review that is spoiler free, and this time we are talking about none other than... That's right, we are talking about Cronenberg's newest movie, which, to my knowledge, hasn't really released in the US yet. My friend hooked me up with a copy, so I was able to watch it early, and I wanted to come on here and kind of talk about it and get into what I thought about it as unspoilery as possible, for as difficult as it is to actually spoil this movie if you've seen it. So there's a couple things that I really wanted to talk about with this movie, and then I'll give a rating and kind of if I suggest the film or not. And the first thing I wanted to talk about, if you know my channel, you know that I'm a big Cronenberg fan. I did a massive video, one of the videos I'm the most proud of, if not the video I'm most proud of, on Cronenberg's movies. And one of the most interesting things we get to see about a new Cronenberg movie is the fact that this is Cronenberg writing for more or less the modern era in a way that he never has. He took a massive break when he made Maps to the Stars, I think in like 2014 or something, and then didn't make another film until Crimes of the Future. And if you've seen my video or just know about Crimes of the Future, you know this isn't exactly a recent script, the script itself being a thought from super early on in his career and being written in the 90s, and he just struggled to get it actually produced until recently. So, The Shrouds is his first truly modern script that we've gotten from him, and with that, it's really interesting what it decides to go about talking about, mainly about paranoia in modern technology, and I think it does it in such a cool but off-putting way. You have stuff which is like essentially memojis in this. 90% of the topics brought up here are all about technology, because the shrouds themselves are a kind of new technology that digitizes life, or in this instance, death, in a really unique way. And seeing Cronenberg kind of write about current technology and the changing into current technology is really interesting, because this movie isn't just about new technology, it is also about grief. Cronenberg making this movie partially to grieve the loss of his wife. It's funny, they even stylized the main character quite a bit like Cronenberg himself, and it's an interesting kind of back and forth with modern technology, because as I've explored in my Cronenberg video, Cronenberg is a person whose philosophy really illustrates the importance of technology and science changing the human experience on a literal level. In this instance, we take a look at characters who are living on and starting to take over their physical existence in a virtual existence, which is a very easy to pull comparison with modern technology, social media, and things like that. A way to keep us all connected, but to where we, in this instance, actually lose physical parts of ourselves. So it ends up being interesting because he's not fully negative towards the topic, but he's definitely a lot more cautious of it than a lot of the other things he's ever looked at and explored in his movies. You see that in the way that paranoia takes over all of these characters. That's really, honestly, the main theme. I even put in my review a joke about conspiracy being the new sex, because that's kind of what's going on in this movie. Everything is a conspiracy, everything is honestly kind of gibberish. You have references to stuff like, oh, we have this vague technology that connects people. What if China gets to it? What if Russia gets to it? Genuine paranoia that's being thrown out there and tapped into in a really interesting way that I think Cronenberg is exploring in a kind of critical context, while it's not completely ignoring those things as actual risks. This movie is all around like that. It's walking a very fine line between saying anything in particular. The movie ultimately doesn't land on much of anything besides processing the personal grief of the characters we're following, which is very few. That brings me to the plotting, which the plotting is where we'll lose most people. This movie is weird, but that's not really where I think we'll lose people. It's very similar in plotting to Crimes of the Future, and the fact that it is a very small cast of people, even smaller than Crimes of the Future in this instance, and they're just kind of talking. nothing really happens in this movie. It kind of ties into what I was talking about for conspiracy, because essentially the entire thing is trying to figure out who vandalized the Shrouds, and just a bunch of conspiracy towards that. It kind of devolves into nothingness as various characters find out random stuff, lie a bunch, and you don't really come out feeling like you really knew what was going on at any point in the movie. And that's kind of part of the point. But with that, if you are not into what the movie is doing, like Crimes of the Future, it's gonna be boring. It barely works. The movie is like this close to being really boring, but the way, in my opinion, that Cronenberg writes dialogue and explores the themes he's looking at here works surprisingly well to keep you engaged, even when it's mostly nothing and it's kind of confusing and convoluted to watch. Touching back on the themes for a second, beyond just talking about it in terms of Cronenberg writing for the modern era, this movie works surprisingly well on an emotional level. I got really drawn into this movie, and I don't know anyone else who could pull it off like this movie does, because again, it's a convoluted plot about conspiracy and new technology, and also losing a loved one. Again, it follows our character who has recently lost his wife to a really horrifying disease. In this instance, as they tried to cure her, they literally took away pieces of her body at a time. And via flashbacks and dreams, we get to see him remember all of this in really graphic and visceral detail. It's really fascinating how it explores his obsession with the Shrouds, a means to permanently capture somebody's spirit into a digital form. You get to always have their body that you can look in on. And the way this brings him comfort is really interesting, and a lot of people question that, but he hits it with total earnestness on why being connected to her body still matters to him. And this actually leads to a really interesting place with the character of her sister, who is identical to her and has a very similar body, and how they play out that story. The entire thing about kind of this identity within body and within digital works incredibly well as he tries to figure out if she might have been killed, and if the people who vandalized the Shrouds might have something to do with her. There's some mystery in there and some really interesting stuff that's more or less convoluted, but where our actual character ends the movie is a really unique spot, and it's not exactly a happy ending. I don't know how people will think about it or what people's takeaway will be, but I know that my takeaway was one that was open-ended, and I think that's kind of where Cronenberg is leaving this movie as well. A sense that we don't really know where all of this is going to land. Cronenberg at this point is a very old man, and I'm sure a bunch of new technology in society literally fundamentally changing how we communicate and exist is a scary thing, especially to lose the love of your life during. So the ability to preserve some of her, the ability to live on partially, and even move on via digital existence is really interesting. To move on and to still carry that piece with you. To still carry those memories in a digital sense. Now, I don't think that's just how the movie is. I don't think it's very cut and dry in that instance, but it was really beautiful to me, and I found myself almost crying, which, if you know this movie, is kind of strange, because, it's just such a dry movie. There's even a part that I think about all the time having to do with a spoilery part of the movie that's super terrifying, that uses the really ugly CG 3D animation memoji thing, and it's really creepy and really effective, and I don't know how he does this. I don't know how he pulls you in so well to the themes and the emotion of the movie, despite it being such a textually off-putting movie. Which brings me actually to my next point, which is that the visuals here, I would say, are kind of a a little bit of a strange one. The entire editing style and visuals of the movie are very flat almost, and I'm sure this is a way that's intentional, but this makes it a really hard movie to, I think, engage with if you're like a modern movie fan. I don't know, I feel like I'm such a big Cronenberg fan and have delved so much into his philosophy while he's made films and like what he's about that I have a very different perspective and like, you know, ability to stomach what he's doing. Like, I showed Crimes of the Future to my girlfriend the other day, and she just thought it was super boring. And I sat there and I was like, yeah, I get that. I get why somebody might think Crimes of the Future is super boring. And I get, even more so with this, why somebody might find it super boring, because it's offering, honestly, even less, like, normal Cronenberg things than Crimes of the Future. There is body horror here, but it's not a lot and framed in much more of a tragic light, being that it almost all revolves around the disease that slowly eats away at his wife. And it's just visually strange, with the CG frequently used throughout it being weird. The recreations and digital shroud cam stuff looks very strange, and just on the whole, it's a very visually surreal kind of feeling, like digitally surreal. It feels like something riffing off of like Apple TV Plus movies and shows, but in a way that feels intentional, I want to say. Either that or it's just low budget filmmaking, because this is, at the end of the day, low budget, and I don't want to attribute any possible flaw to Cronenberg's omniscient genius. This movie has flaws, and in my opinion it barely works, but I was genuinely invested, and I've been thinking about this movie like a lot, actually. So I really wanted to hop on here and say that it's coming to theaters soon, probably only for a little bit, and you should go watch it if you're okay with what's in it and with Cronenberg in general, because it's definitely very Cronenberg in all the possible ways. So keep that in mind. But you should support this film. I really hope that maybe we can get another Cronenberg film. Who knows? I honestly don't know if he'll still continue working, but I love Cronenberg's filmography. I love what he has to say, both as a filmmaker and as just a person commenting on the social and political and psychological standings of the world. As for the Cronenberg ranking that I did, I think I talked about the ranking specifically in the last video. I'm not sure if I specifically ranked them, but I do have a ranking. I'll put that up on screen, and this film lands at number 10 for me currently. That may change with time, but at the moment, this makes top 10. I mean, those middle films are all relatively similar in quality in terms of they're good and they're exploring really cool ideas, and I really like them, but they're not like as tight as they could be. But yeah, I really loved this very, very, very weird, very stilted, very slow Cronenberg movie about the changing of human beings and about how grief affects your body physically and about how digital technology affects our grief and therefore our body. And it's so, check this out if you want. I would suggest it. I gave it a 4 out of 10. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoy. At the moment, I am going to be spending the next little bit working on a Last of Us Season 2 video. I had already done 3 other videos that you can go check out on the first game, the second game, which is another one of my favorite videos I've ever done, and the first season of the show. So I want to continue talking about The Last of Us since it's something that means a lot to me. So I'm going to be watching and taking notes as the season progresses. Hopefully that won't be too far in the future. I think it's supposed to finish in May. I don't know, but we will see, and I'm really excited to talk about something that means so much to me again, like Cronenberg. But thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I'm about to go see Crash in 35mm this week, which is super exciting. That's the only Cronenberg film I haven't seen, so I'm about to round out his filmography, which is crazy. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see how many people hate this movie, and if any of my friends like it at all. Thank you guys again. I love you all, and goodbye.